Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. It's time for episode 4 of my A to Z alphabetical run through the Blu-rays in my collection, which is sort of behind me there. My name is Paul Mount. If you're new here, don't forget, if you enjoy this video and any of the other videos, going back 200 odd videos of various bits and pieces, reviews, unboxings, cinema trips, all that sort of caper, then please like and subscribe particularly, and share. Tell people. It's the only way this channel is going to grow. And of course, leave a comment. Always nice to hear from you. Right, let's get on with D's. The D's in my Blu-ray collection. Not a massive amount. I've got them all lined up here. Yeah, letter D. Letter D. The first one is a film which came out a few years ago. Wasn't particularly well received, but I sort of quite enjoyed it. It's been to 2016, in fact. It's the remake of Dad's Army. Dad's Army, of course, is the classic BBC sitcom from the 60s and 70s, endlessly repeated. I think BBC Two are screening it even now on Saturday nights. It always pulls in good viewing figures, and it's one of the classics. And this reboot had an all-star cast with the likes of the brilliant Toby Jones playing Captain Mannering, Bill Nighy, Sergeant Wilson, Tom Courtenay, Danny Mays, Blake Harrison from The Inbetweeners, Michael Hordern, Bill Patterson. It's a really good cast with a guest appearance by Catherine Zeta-Jones as a Nazi spy, as I recall. It's good fun. It's not on the quality standard of the original TV series or even the 1971 film, but it's sort of has a certain charm to it. I think the problem is it's a bit more of an adventure perhaps than the TV series ever was, because it's got more of a plot. But the cast are great. They all capture and encapsulate those characters very well. And much as I enjoy it, and you do sort of think, well, what's the point? It seems a bit pointless, especially so many years after the series ended. Whether it was an attempt to reboot the thing and have a series of films, of course that didn't happen. I think it did fairly well, but not enough to warrant another film. If you open up it's got a bit of it's got a photograph of the cast, not artwork, on the disc, and a digital code which I'm sure is expired, but if anybody wants to try it, please feel free. That's Dad's Army 2016. A worthy but sort of unnecessary attempt at revitalizing a classic. The next one up is a title that we'll see several times in the D's, unfortunately, because I've bought them on several different releases. This is Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, the second of the Doctor Who movies. You may recall that I bought this fairly recently on the new 4K set that came out from Studio Canal, which I still have handy. That's it. This is a Blu-ray version, a steelbook in fact, which came out 2015. Yeah, it's a nice steelbook. I did think of getting rid of it in the wake of the 4Ks, but it's a nice steelbook set. I do like the cover art. That is art. And it's a nice little set. I don't think I've opened it very much, to be honest. Almost certainly not played it. It's got a nice bit of art on the back of London in Flames. Some nice photographs from the film. And yeah, it's a nice 4K. I don't think it's easy to get hold of now, so I'm probably going to hold on to that one. The next is a film which I'm not really all that fussed on, but I've got it because it's sort of, very well regarded. It's the second in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. It's The Dark Knight with Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and of course that acclaimed performance from Heath Ledger as the Joker. It's not my version of Batman. It's not my preferred version of the Caped Crusader. My preferred version, of course, is Adam West. I appreciate that doesn't particularly play that well to a modern sensibility, but I just find this whole Dark Knight thing a little bit oppressive and not much fun. And I think, I do like to see superhero stuff, not comedic, overly comedic, like say Thor: Love and Thunder and particularly She-Hulk at the moment on TV. But I think you need to have a little bit of light and shade. And for me, the Nolan films were all dark and they're not fun to watch. Here's one which isn't particularly good, but I think I picked it up quite cheap somewhere. It's Dark Shadows, Tim Burton's remake of the classic American daytime horror soap opera. It was an odd one, Dark Shadows. It ran for hundreds of episodes. It was sort of a half-hour gothic soap opera that a daytime soap slot, very unusual. This was Tim Burton's attempt to reinvent it, starring Johnny Depp, of course, as Barnabas Collins. Turned into a vampire by a jilted lover. He's entombed for 2 centuries until he emerges in the very changed world of 1972. Returning to his once majestic home, he finds the few dysfunctional descendants of the Collins family who remain. Determined to return his family name to its former glory, Barnabas is thwarted at every turn by his former lover, the seductive witch Angelique Eva Green, who's always worth watching in this wildly imaginative adventure from Tim Burton. I think this starts off quite well. I saw it in the cinema. I haven't watched it since. It starts off quite well, but I think it descends into silliness a bit too quickly for my liking. It's a bit of a misfire from Tim Burton, which is a shame because it had a lot of potential. The next one is one which I have a lot of affection for because it brings back lots of memories for me. This is one of the great classic cheapo science fiction films, John Carpenter's Dark Star, made on a budget of, well, buttons, frankly. It's a great classic old school film. It's a pulp science fiction classic which parodies 2001. It's about this spaceship called the Dark Star, which travels through space, blowing up unstable planets. There's an alien on board, which is like this big rubber balloon with claws. It's very cheap, very low budget. Stars Dan O'Bannon, Joe Saunders, Brian Morrell. Apart from Dan O'Bannon, nobody we know particularly well. It's a great film, and I have particular affection for this film because when I bought my first domestic video recorder, which would have been 1978, the magic of being able to record and keep films and TV programs to watch again, it was just unthinkable. Back in those days, you had to hope things would turn up on TV to see them or be repeated on TV. But I remember Dark Star being screened that winter, I think it's probably 79 actually, when I think of it. And I remember recording that on VHS. And I may well still have that VHS somewhere. I know I chucked a lot of my VHS years ago, as many of us did. I kept some. Not sure if it made the move over to the new house where I moved 5 years ago. I must see if I got it around somewhere. But it's just a classic, cheesy sort of old school, charming sort of film. And I have affection for it because I've always liked it. And I've got that sort of connection with the early days of video. This is, I think it's still available on Blu-ray, Dark Star. The next 2 films both have the same title, but they're very different films. This is The Darkest Hour, which comes in a nice slip cover. It's one of those old Blu-ray 3D, Blu-ray DVD and digital combinations that you used to get. So there's sort of 3 discs in here for one film. I quite like this film. It's not very highly regarded because it is a bit silly. The logic of it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think it's quite creepy. This came out in, I think in 2012, 2011. It's set in Russia, which is unusual and probably not very popular at the moment. But it's about this group of, I think these 2 entrepreneurs have gone to try and sell the rights to this new app they've created. They're turned down and suddenly the earth is invaded by these strange energy creatures. Pure energy, invisible extraterrestrials that show no mercy as they incinerate helpless human beings mercilessly by touching them. Small band of survivors armed with their courage and ingenuity join forces with an eccentric Russian scientist who may hold the key to stopping the alien onslaught. It's very bog standard alien invasion, but it's the unusual thing is that it's set in Russia, and you've got a sort of Russian landscape and a Russian sort of aesthetic to it. I quite like this. I know it was slated quite a lot when it came out. I saw it in the cinema. I thought that's quite good fun. It's quite a clever idea. Something a bit different. There's something creepy about sort of an invisible alien invading force. And I quite like this. It's probably due a rewatch. That's called The Darkest Hour. The next one is called just Darkest Hour. But we call it, it's pretty much the same thing. This came out a few years back, 2018 in fact. This is the film that won Gary Oldman a BAFTA and an Oscar for his performance as Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. This is a sort of very dark days of World War II, when Hitler's forces are storming across Europe and are closing in on the United Kingdom, and Winston, the new Prime Minister, has to do the very best he can for the UK in very dangerous situations with a lot of political intrigue and enemies lining up on all sides. I saw this film when, I think I might have mentioned before, I used to work as an usher in a local arts cinema in Cardiff, near to where I lived. And this is one of the films I picked to do one of my shifts for because it sounded interesting and I loved it. It was really good, very intelligent film. And it is a great performance from Gary Oldman. This, I think, is available quite cheaply. I know it was Asda was Asda was selling it quite cheaply recently. You can pick it up, I'm sure, for a couple of quid from CEX. It's a really good film. That's Darkest Hour. That's directed by Joe Wright of many other films. More Batman for you here. This is the Steelbook edition of The Dark Knight Rises. This is the third in the Nolan trilogy, and probably the worst because it's just a bit silly. Christian Bale's back, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman again, Anne Hathaway as a sort of Catwoman. Tom Hardy is, boom! Oh, you can't hear what he's saying. All the way through the film. It's really frustrating. This is a big, silly film, basically. And in fact, towards the end, it drifts very close to Batman TV series territory, with Batman flying a nuclear bomb out across the bay to try and get it away from exploding, because Bane is threatening to destroy Gotham City. It's a nonsensical plot. And there's some silly plot elements in it that make you go, what? That couldn't happen. That's just completely ridiculous. Even for a comic book film, this is a bit silly. However, this is quite a nice, sturdy steelbook edition. It's a bit battered, so I think I picked it up secondhand somewhere. The J card's not in good condition. And it's not a great film, to be honest, but and it's very long as well. I seem to think it's about nearly 3 hours. I remember going to see this, 164 minutes. I remember going to see this with one of my friends, and it outstays its welcome, shall we say. Here's one, which I have on 4K, so I don't quite know why I've kept it on Blu-ray, but it is a fantastic film. If you've never seen the Planet of the Apes trilogy, the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy, you must rectify that immediately, because they're fantastic films. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, this is the second one. Dawn, the third one was War for the Planet of the Apes. A really clever and intelligent science fiction trilogy based on the classic 60s trilogy. I got all three of these on 4K. In fact, I watched them fairly recently. I was going to do a video looking back at them. I might well do that yet. Terrific films, just so engaging, fantastic performances, beautifully made, and just intelligent. And that's what I like about this film in particular. It's such a good film. And I've noticed that I have, and I'm keeping this, so I can chuck that. Chucked. This is the Steelbook of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It's just great. It's a lovely Steelbook. It's got a really nice image of Caesar, and inside, sort of a negative version of that, and you've got your Blu-ray and DVD, I believe. 3D Blu-ray and the ordinary Blu-ray. I'm keeping that one because it is the Steelbook edition. Really good. This is one I watched again fairly recently, and I think I did a retro movie review on this a while back. This dates back to 2010. This is Daybreak. It's quite an unusual vampire film. Stars Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, and Sam Neill. It's sort of set at a time in the future where vampires have effectively overrun the human race, and the human race is on the back foot. And Ethan Hawke plays a scientist who may well have a cure that can turn the situation around and reverse it, but the vampires don't want to be cured. Very good, very moody. I think I did a retro video for this one way back, so it might be worth checking it out. That's Daybreakers. I'm pretty sure I did a video for this one as well, a retro movie review. Day After Tomorrow, one of the classic disaster movies, if you like, from that period, directed by Roland Emmerich, who recently did the dreadful Moonfall, which just goes to show that these things are cyclical. I think those films are slightly out of style at the moment. But this is The Day After Tomorrow, which dates back now to way back. It goes back to 2004. It's 18 years old. Still looks very good, though. I think the effects are still good, especially the scene where New York is overrun and swamped. That looks terrific. It's a great film. It's a story of, I suppose you could say it's a sort of a global warming warning, but it's a bit cheesy and a bit more exploitative than that. But it's really good fun. Jake Gyllenhaal is excellent. And well worth a look if you've not seen it for a while, and I haven't. Stick to. Right, the next one is one of my favourite British genre films, and it's a must-watch. And in fact, I'm probably going to do a retro review of this one because it's such a good film. This The Day the Earth Caught Fire. This is terrifying in a very clever way. This was made back in 1961. It's black and white. yeah, it's in black and white. Directed by Val Guest, and it's done in a sort of documentary style. It stars Edward Judd, and it's the story of Earth's temperature is rising. Nobody knows why exactly. There's a heat wave, everybody's sweltering, resources, water, everything's getting in short supply, and there's a bit of a panic going on. And it turns out that the planet is off its axis. It's been caused by nuclear bomb explosions. Again, it's a sort of cautionary thing about the perils of nuclear war, really, more than anything else, I suppose. The Earth's knocked off its axis and is set on a collision course with the sun. London is burning, and a reporter, Peter Stenning, played by Edward Judd, breaks the story, which has been kept secret, and investigates the government cover-up. Meanwhile, there are plans to try and put things right. This is very gritty, you feel sweaty watching it because the characters all drenched in sweat, and nobody's comfortable, and everybody's sort of exhausted because of the heat. And it's done in a sort of a faux documentary style. Even though it's a drama, you feel that it's told in a way that it could be real, because a lot of it is set in what were at the time the offices of the Daily Express in Fleet Street. And it just has that sort of verisimilitude and urgency about it. It's terrific. And it's got a real sense, a really typically British sort of sense of doom and gloom. It's a great film. I really recommend this if you've never seen it. That's The Day the Earth Caught Fire. It's available from BFI. This one I know I did a retro review of a while back, so I won't dwell too long. This is the original Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951, incredibly. Michael Rennie as an alien invader who's come to Earth to warn it about its warlike ways, which have attracted attention from outer space. Nothing's changed. 50 years later, we still seem to be determined to destroy ourselves. But it's a great film, very moody, very atmospheric, and again, really stands out well. Don't, however, make the mistake of picking up the Keanu Reeves version from a few years back, because that's rubbish. There we are, that's The Day the Earth Stood Still. Next up we have, I'll do them both together, Deadpool and Deadpool 2. This is the Deadpool 2 super duper cut. It's Ryan Reynolds playing one of Marvel's more extreme characters. They're good fun films. I mean, there is supposed to be a third one on the way, apparently, which is fine. I think they're good fun. I think the first one is the best because it was sort of a well-regarded sort of cult superhero character coming to the screen. The second one, I think the problem is with Deadpool, he's a one-note sort of character. Once you've heard the jokes, once you get the style of it, that's what it is. There's not a lot else to it. But it's entertaining. Ryan Reynolds plays the part he always plays in all his films, really. He plays this sort of snippy, wisecracking guy. It's perfectly suited to him. And to be fair, he does play it very well. And he's very passionate about the part as well. So, yeah, there is going to be a Deadpool 3. It'll be interesting to see what happens, though, because that's going to be now part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they don't tend to lose wary, so we shall see where we go with that one. Next up, we have this fun film called Deep Blue Sea. Again, I have certain emotional attachments to this, if you like, because this came out originally in 1999. This was just when DVD was first making its mark. And I remember importing this, getting a Region 1 edition of DVD, because they were all DVDs were new at the time, and I was sort of picking them up from different places. And this was one that I picked up on a Region 1 disc. That's long gone, but I've now got the Region 2. This is one of the better post-Jaws shark movies. Stars Thomas Jane, Michael Rappaport, Stellan Skarsgård, Samuel L. Jackson. And this has got, if you've seen this film, you'll know the shock sequence halfway through, which sort of sets this film off with a lot of its sharky forebears. It's a good film. Deep Impact. This came out in 1998. Came out the same year as Armageddon, Michael Bay's bigger, louder disaster movie. This is a slightly more subtle piece. This is directed by Mimi Leder and stars Morgan Freeman, Tia Leone, Robert Duvall, and a young Elijah Wood. There's a cover-up. An asteroid or a meteor is on its way to Earth. It's going to cause terrible destruction. Tia Leone plays a journalist who discovers that it's happening. Earth's likely to be annihilated. It's a bit more human. It's a bit more, delves a bit more into the characters, her relationship with her father. But there is, of course, a space mission that tries to save the Earth, led by Robert Duvall. It's got a very explosive climax, but it's much more of a character piece than Armageddon, which is sort of bang, bang, bang. That's Deep Impact. Here's another good film, a Martin Scorsese film from... I'm always looking up the year on these things. Doesn't say. But this goes back, a good, must be nearly 20 years now. Really good sort of gangster type thriller. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, and Mark Wahlberg, The Departed. Really good film about an agent, Leonardo DiCaprio, is inside a crime mob run by Jack Nicholson's Frank Costello. He has to win his trust and help his detective handlers, Mark Wahlberg and Martin Sheen, bring him down. Really intense, very good film. But the main thing I remember is the sequence where somebody's chucked off a building and lands with a splat in front of Matt Damon's character. Leonardo DiCaprio's character even. Probably do a rewatch. Not really the sort of films I necessarily go for. I'm not really big on that sort of Martin Scorsese gritty films, much as he's not a fan of superhero films. But this, I think, is probably due a rewatch because I did enjoy it. Here's one I've never watched. I picked this up. This is a Region 4 Australian disc. Can't remember where I picked this up. This is Dominic Cooper in The Devil's Double. The shocking true story of Latif, played by Dominic Cooper, an Iraqi army lieutenant forced to become the body double of Saddam Hussein's depraved and sadistic son Uday. I hear it's very good. I haven't got around to watching it. Don't know if I ever will, to be honest. It goes back to 2011. But I think it's supposed to be pretty good. If you've seen The Devil's Double, why not leave a comment down below? Persuade me to watch it. Tell me why I should watch it. Go on. Here's one I quite like. This is District 9 by Neil Blomkamp. Now, Neil Blomkamp is the South African director who appeared to be the next big thing when he brought out this. Stars Sholto Copley, who I often find extremely annoying, but he's not too bad in Beast, the new Idris Elba film, which I reviewed back there. This is an interesting film about aliens who've come to Earth over this rundown South African town as Johannesburg. These sort of insectoid type creatures, and there's a sort of friction between humanity and the police force who are keeping an eye on them. And Sholto Copley plays one lone human who discovers the mysterious secret of their weapon technology. It's gritty, it's interesting, it's spectacular, and it's set Neil Blomkamp up as a very promising new genre director, but he's not really followed up on that particularly well. His follow-up, Elysium, with Matt Damon, was a bit of a damp squib. Then he did the dreadful Chappie, which was just awful. And I don't know what he's been up to lately. I haven't seen his name around for a while. He was once associated with an Alien film, but I think because his reputation dipped a bit, that never came to anything. Only a few more to go. A Quentin Tarantino classic, Django Unchained. Again, do a rewatch. It's funny with Quentin Tarantino, I love his films, but every time the film comes out, I'm always sort of wary of it in case it's going to be too obscure or too oblique or too difficult. But I always get really engrossed in them. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which came out a couple of years ago, was a fantastic film. And the book, I've just finished reading the book of it, actually. He did a novelization which is just as good, although almost entirely different. This is Django Unchained, of course, stars Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kerry Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, a lot of his sort of repertory company of actors. It's his take on a Western, and it's it's 18 certificate, it's very gritty, very dark. It's sort of to do with slavery and oppression, but great performances, and it's one of his greats. This is one I've not seen yet. It's a horror film, and I might do this for the Halloween October run of reviews I'm planning. This is Guillermo del Toro presents, but does not direct, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, with Guy Pearce and Katie Holmes. Feeling isolated and alone, Sally decides to explore his sinister new surroundings with terrifying consequences. One of those haunted housey type things. It doesn't sound particularly outstanding, but it might be worth a little look, so I'll probably give it a glance at some point. This is one I've also never seen. I know it's very well regarded. This is the remake from a few years back of Dredd, with Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. This is the 3D disc, apparently. I said I've never watched it, and I must get around to watching it because I hear it's very good. I've never been a big fan of Judge Dredd. I don't think I've ever read the comics. I never saw the Sylvester Stallone version. It's a character that I'm a bit arm's length with, but I hear it's very good, so I need to see it at some point. This is a film which I think's just had a big luxury box set released. Ryan Gosling in this is Drive. It's an interesting film. It's directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. It's the story of Hollywood stunt driver Ryan Gosling, who moonlights as a top-notch getaway driver for hire in the criminal underworld. He finds himself a target for some of LA's most dangerous men after agreeing to aid the husband of his beautiful neighbour, Irene. When the job goes dangerously awry, the only way he can keep Irene and son alive is to do what he does best, drive. It's a very moody film. It's quite a insular sort of performance from Ryan Gosling, as I recall. He's a man of few words, but it is quite an intense film. Remember seeing this in the cinema, haven't watched it since, so I really need to get stuck into some of these films for a bit of a rewatch. Here's a film, of course, we've all seen over and over again. It's the first James Bond film, Dr. No, on a nice slipcover Blu-ray edition. What can you say about this? Sean Connery, Ursula Andress. Bond is back in the news, of course, this week, as he is very often, with all this talk about future versions of Bond that are going to be much more sensitive, much more modern. And you think, yeah, it's not James Bond. But there we go. Another Doctor Who here. This is the Steelbook Blu-ray of Doctor Who and the Daleks. I showed you Daleks Invasion of Earth earlier. This is the Blu-ray 4K. This is the Steelbook edition of Doctor Who and the Daleks. Again, really nice cover. I think the cover image is actually better than the 4K, which came out recently. I mean, compare that with this, which looks very cartoony. And this just looks exciting. Nice images from the film. And a nice image on the back. And some nice stuff inside. So it's I think this looks better than the 4K presentation, which is why I've kept it. And of course it's a nice steelbook and it looks very nice. That's Doctor Who and the Daleks. Speaking of Doctor Who and the Daleks, here's a collector's edition of the both films. Studio Canal brought these out a while back. I think it's possibly the same discs, but just in a slightly different packaging with a nice slipcover. As I mentioned when I reviewed those two films, I've got more copies of those films than any other thing I've ever bought. Quite nice art. They're the Daleks, and nice little set. That's the two Doctor Who films again. Nearly there. This is a film again. I've not seen this, and again I'm planning to do this for Halloween. This is Mike Flanagan's Doctor Sleep, the sequel, if you like, to The Shining. I hear it's very good. It is quite a long film. That often puts me off. 152 minutes. But fairly bog standard Blu-ray inside. But I hear it's very good. And it's one I'm going to have a look at. Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson taking up the story of the Overlook Hotel many years after The Shining. And finally... No, not quite finally, in fact. One has fallen on the floor. Excuse me. Picked it up. Right, so this is Donkey Punch. This is an interesting British film directed by Ollie Blackburn. Don't know anything about him, what he's done since. This is about a group of hedonistic young kids, including Jamie Winston, Julian Morris. In the Mediterranean, these three girls are out to have a fantastic holiday. They meet up with this bunch of lads. They go to a luxury yacht to have a party where things go horribly wrong after a sex game takes a turn for the worst. Brutal, bloody, violent. It's an 18 certificate, so it's not for the faint-hearted. But it's quite a good little intense horror thriller, which has sort of been forgotten and is probably worth a re-evaluation. That is Donkey Punch. I won't explain why it's called that. You have to watch it to find out. Finally, quite a good comedy. I'm not a big fan of American comedy films, though I do like American comedy TV series. American comedy films are often seen a bit broad and overplayed to me, but this is quite good. It's Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis from the Hangover films. He can be a bit irritating. This came out in 2010, so I think it was just after Iron Man. This is an interesting story about two unlikely travellers who are thrown together when a scheduled plane trip is cancelled and they have to travel together across America. Expectant first-time father Peter Hyman, Robert Downey Jr., is desperate to get home before his wife gives birth in 5 days. He's trying to get from Atlanta. He encounters aspiring actor Ethan Tremblay, and they both have to sort of hitch a ride across country to try and get home. They sort of start out as unlikely travellers, but you know the way these things work out. It sort of their relationship changes as the film goes on. It's quite entertaining, quite funny. One of the better American film comedies of recent vintage. There we are. Right, I realise this has gone on for half an hour. Apologies for that. That's my D's, the letter D in my Blu-ray collection. Hope you've enjoyed this little trundle through the collection. Let me know which one of those you think I should watch, the ones I haven't seen. Any ones you watched that you have watched, let me know what you think of them. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget, like, subscribe and share. I'll see you soon for another video. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.